All right. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to another episode of the Health Detective Podcast by Functional Diagnostic Nutrition. My name is Evan Transu, aka Detective Ev, and I will be your host for today's show, episode number 347 of the Health Detective Podcast. This is going to be a real interesting one today, so I'm going to go through something real quick, and then we will get to our guest. You guys know I've been shouting them out. If you haven't gotten one yet, you got to get one. It's our friends at NorthstarGrounding.com. That was John Haggerty. He was on the podcast just a couple of months ago. And, normally I don't repetitively shout out things that were on this show, but I felt so inspired by their story and what they're doing. So NorthstarGrounding.com are these grounding sheets and grounding pillowcases. This is crazy sounding, but this is something that you can measure. If you don't know that, that's actually a real thing. You can ground while you sleep. And so you plug these things in, it grounds you while you sleep, and 100% of the profits from that company goes to funding their nonprofit, which is called Going Well. And what it is a place where cancer patients who have survived their cancers using natural methods actually create videos that are free to the consumer, so free to you and I, so that we can send these customized videos to our friends or family members who might be suffering with cancer, so that they don't have to hear us, shoving natural medicine down their throat. They can actually hear it from someone who understands the unique struggles and the scares and the fears that they're going through being diagnosed with that condition. So I'm like, could this be any more perfect business model? I mean, it's like the most amazing thing ever. So NorthstarGrounding.com, the code for the discount at the end of checkout is HDP15. That's all caps, HDP, like Health Detective Podcast 15 at checkout. And now we'll move on to our guest today. I will read her bio and then we will jump right into this. So, Stephanie Kwong has spent over 14 years in the personal development industry, having trained and worked as a subconscious rewiring coach. She's now serving her divine calling as the co founder and CEO of the Rapid Rewire Method. She's deeply obsessed with the Rapid Rewire Method tools, which are groundbreaking and radically effective mental, emotional, and spiritual processes that guarantee rapid integrative healing, change, and transformation. And it's her mission to show the world why these tools are truly capable of cultivating joy, fulfillment, and liberation by quickly ending cycles of suffering. Stephanie, welcome to the show. I'm really looking forward to this interview today.
Thanks, Evan. I appreciate you having me on, and I've been stoked as well to talk to you because I know you have such a deep passion for mental health.
Mhm.
I did a little stalking down the Googs and saw all about your story, and which is so inspiring. So I'm really pumped for this conversation.
Well, thank you for checking that out. Also, I got to shout this out because so many of our watchers right now and listeners later will know this. So, Stephanie, we just made a connection here. She was on a personal development retreat of sorts, it sounds like, with none other than Elizabeth Gaines. So, and you didn't even realize she worked for FDN until now.
Yep.
So cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then, of course, Reed Davis as well. So she knows the whole crew, guys. She's awesome. Stephanie, I'm going to start our first question today a little bit different than I normally would before we dive into the method itself. Normally, I ask, when did people's health symptoms begin and what did they look like? We could talk about any health struggles you might have had, but I wanted to reword it for the sake of, I know no one would get into the work that you're doing just accidentally. You didn't set out at 5 years old and saying, you know what, I'm going to start the Rapid Rewire Method. I'm going to be a co-founder, CEO. I'm going to do all this stuff. So what the heck led to this being your position in life now?
Yeah. Do you want the short story or the long story?
I feel like you're gonna have a great story. I love talking to you. Let's do somewhere in the middle if we can.
Somewhere in the middle. Well, the medium size story is essentially, I was actually working in the entertainment industry, and I felt at some point that it just was not fulfilling my soul. I was doing something that was it was essentially a trauma response where I never felt seen as a kid. I didn't feel validated. I didn't feel significant. And so I think I went into this industry to try to get that. And I have been doing my own personal development for a very long time. Fortunately, I have an immigrant mother who was doing personal development when I was a kid. I listened to Tony Robbins on tape in my house that she bought off of an infomercial. So I heard his like booming voice and talking about presence and passion and change your state. And so it was like almost embedded into me as a child alongside the challenges that I had too. So there was something already. I had a touch point at a very young age. And when I decided, because I was doing my own growth, I was like, man, entertainment industry is not for me, but I don't know what's next. And so I reflected back on the moments of when I actually felt most fulfilled. And it was when I was in service. So I actually got turned away from trying to volunteer at the SPCA with my best friend, Dina Lannerman, at 9 years old. And we walked up and they're like, how old are you girls? And we told them, they're like, you can't volunteer here. And we're like, we can't hold puppies and kittens like at 9. And so as I got older, I kept finding ways to give back, whether it was as a candy striper to working the suicide hotline in college. I went to UC Berkeley. There was a high homeless population. So I helped them there. When I got to LA, same thing. And so that was the moments when I felt most fulfilled. And so when I decided to leave the entertainment industry, went to go find a bridge job. I was actually running operations at a live-in weight loss facility. So people who really struggled with their weight, I knew there was a deep mental, emotional connection there. And I had been doing so much my own inner work. I was like, you know what, maybe I can go there and at least support them. And so that's what I did. And then literally met a woman who I was supporting. And then she took me to Italy, where she was from, to coach her. And that's actually how I fell into coaching. It wasn't cool or popular back in 2008. No one really knew about it. So for me, I was like, you can get paid for this, right? Because for me, it was always about volunteering and giving back, not about I do good and then I get paid for it, but realizing now this was actually an industry that was beginning to grow. And so I was a coach, facilitator, guide for about 12 years. I've worked in treatment centers to addiction rehabs, inside of a treatment center with women with BPD and bipolar. I had run groups, retreats, and then also worked one-on-one with very high-profile people. And in my private practice with high-profile people, they expected results, and they paid me really well for them. And if you can't tell, I'm Asian. We Asians, we like fast results. We love efficiency. We don't like to waste our time. And so I was always on the hunt for the most effective tools out there. And I'm trained in NLP, hypnosis, somatic experiencing, TRE, havening, EFT, you name it. And through that, I was, getting really great results from my clients. Now, December 2020, I ended up getting pregnant with my now partner. He didn't want more kids. I did. So we were not trying. And when I got pregnant, of course, I was like, oh, this is meant to be. Like my little spirit child's coming through. But then at 9.5 weeks, I lost the baby. And so I went pretty dark, rightfully so. I'm also very familiar with grief, but this time something was really different because over time, over the months, I was getting worse in my symptoms. I couldn't look at social media anymore because I felt like everybody in 2021 was announcing that they were pregnant, and it was ultra triggering. I would go outside, and if I saw a baby or a pregnant woman, I would start bawling uncontrollably, unconsolably. Now I'm like, can I not go outside anymore? I had days where I just couldn't get out of bed, didn't want to function, and was having suicidal ideation. And as an entrepreneur, you can't just take 5 months off work. And so it was really impacting my ability to function. And again, it was getting worse, and nothing I had been trained in, none of those tools worked. An extraordinary community of coaches, therapists, healers, shamans that I had cultivated over the 12 years that I was coaching people, nothing was helping. And then I got introduced to the tools that we now call the Rapid Rewire Method. Mm-hmm. And so literally, Evan, in one 60-minute session, process the trauma of the miscarriage, drain the emotional charge that I could not even find or feel sadness or grief in my body anymore. It was gone. It's never come back. I've never had to reprocess it or only learn coping mechanisms to manage when I got triggered again. It was literally complete. And I noticed that when I would share the story, other people had bigger emotional reactions to the miscarriage than I did. And so I was like, what is this? I was the chick that was known for getting quick results and integrative results. And so I wanted to know more, and I kept diving into these tools. And literally after about 7 weeks of working with them, I got the divine command, you're meant to bring these tools into the world. And so that's the medium length story to how I ended up co-founding the Rapid Rewire Method.
Well, it's a heck of a medium story. So thank you for sharing that with us. I don't know that we got to cover all that on our original call together. So there was awesome to get to hear like, wow, there's some serious passion and inspiration for this. Not to be a pain, and I want to throw you off. If we're able, because I think the mic that you're using is the one on your headphones,
Mhm.
and your hair, when it rubs against it, it does seem to, it just gives a little static.
Okay.
Yeah, if we can change it. I'm sorry that I didn't notice that before we got on. I
Yep.
can edit it in the audio, but not for
How is
video.
this if I just pull it
So
out? Is that better?
that's still better. Yeah, thank you so much, Stephanie.
Okay, cool.
Okay, cool. So, rapid rewire method. Let's talk about. Well, I'd love to talk about what it is, but even preceding that, I suppose, I'd like to talk about this whole topic of trauma. So many of us in this health space have recognized at one point or another that, okay, maybe there is some unprocessed stuff. I mean, the health issues in and of themselves, even if they didn't stem from some traumatic experiences, a lot of the times when we go through these things, maybe it started with something as seemingly benign as a gluten sensitivity, but now the health issues that you've dealt with, they're traumatic in their own right. So, you mentioned something about you don't have to reprocess this stuff. You're not still getting triggered and living with this. I guess I'd like to know what are some signs that we're still living with these unprocessed things, because I know that some people are aware of specific things that happen, so they might be able to clearly see the triggers. But for those that aren't able to clearly see it, are there any hints or clues that you've learned over time that this might be an indication that you're still dealing with some unprocessed stuff? Am I making sense?
Yeah, let me see if I can pick up what you're putting down. But essentially, it's like, look, anytime we are struggling in our lives, there's usually a trauma response that's occurring. Something that we talk about, and I'm just going to say this in one framework in the level of our work, we talk about people being in stuck identities. What do I mean by that? These are coping identities that we've created because of an experience the past that occurred that was so painful that we created a new identity to step into in order to feel safe, to feel protected, to not be hurt like that again. So, coming back to what you said, right? If someone has a health issue and it's a traumatizing experience, what might they create as a coping identity to go into to try to avoid the pain of what they went through with their health stuff? I'm just going to toss it to you, Evan. Like, what are some things that you've seen that you notice if someone's traumatized by a health experience, what could be a symptom of it that they create for themselves or like a way that they cope with it?
Well, a negative one, I mean, I feel like I'll speak for myself even, I've been prone to anger probably with certain things faster than would make sense, or just overwhelm. That's definitely a word that I think myself and many other people would use, right? Overwhelm from things that don't necessarily make sense. It's like you can handle all this pressure over here, but then this seemingly little thing happens and it's like the end of the world. So I would say I'd get started with those two. I'm sure there's a long list.
Yeah, so exactly. So there's going to be something that's disruptive in our lives, something that is preventing us from being who we truly want to be, being present in the moment, or moving us towards what it is that we want, right? Anger, it actually is not a bad emotion, but if you get stuck in it, it can become a problem. Overwhelm is when people get stuck in overwhelm, right? There's certain things that when we get into as like coping identities, right? Because anger sometimes is like, I'm going to push that away or it'll move you into action. It's something. Overwhelm is, well, now I don't have to be responsible anymore because maybe you were somebody who took on a lot of responsibility and you got shamed or judged for it. And then now it's like, I don't want to be responsible. So these are all these unconscious ways to be able to feel safe, to preserve our ego to a certain degree that we slide into that are truly disempowering and not moving us towards what we want, or again, being able to stay present in the moment. So if you start to pay attention to what are those moments where like you question like, why am I acting like so crazy, or I'm observing all this head trash popping up and it's making me feel awful about myself, or I'm avoiding something because there's fear, or I just don't want to feel hurt again. There's all these ways to be able to just, well, step one is to slow down and observe yourself and to see where are you being effective and where are you being ineffective in your life. Where do you feel disempowered versus empowered? Where are you feeling like you're struggling to get to where you want to be versus actually effortlessly achieving it? Because that is possible, but we slide into these, coping mechanisms, coping identities, ways of being that are really ineffective, that are essentially the trauma responses that are not serving us now anymore. Maybe it helped us in the past, but in this present moment, it continues to be a block towards really feeling true fulfillment in life or being able to move forward in the things that we say we want.
Do you think is a trauma response always inherently negative? And maybe if it's positive, it wouldn't be considered a trauma response. But here's another example. I'll use myself. Like I told you on the phone, I got into public speaking to kids. I obviously speak for FTN in a sense with this podcast. And I would say with the anxiety and depression that I dealt with as a kid, amongst other challenges, health and physical and mental health, I feel like a lot of times career wise, I've done the opposite, right? I was weak. I didn't have a voice. So I'm going to be strong and I'm going to use my voice to help you, right? Like the stage is almost a coping mechanism in and of itself. But I wouldn't say that I necessarily look at that as bad. Although I would also have to admit, I think that the reason I chose that career path or felt so called to it is directly because of the things that I experienced. So would that even be considered a trauma response then? Is that growth, or trauma response is always inherently negative? I'm curious.
Yeah, look, I would say for you, Evan, you've been inspiring people with that. I don't see it as like I wasn't being seen or I need my voice heard and I've always had it shut down. So this is why I'm speaking up. I could feel your true motivation for why you share your story and speak in front of these kids is because you really genuinely want to give them the keys to liberate themselves from their mental health stuff, or at least have the opportunity to be vulnerable and talk about it instead of holding it in and then finding weird coping mechanisms to deal with it. So I don't see that as a trauma response necessarily. Now, going along that same thread though, when I used to work with really high profile people, right? When we would start to date, they're so successful. So people would be like, man, they have it all together. They've made it. They've figured it out. And then I fortunately got to go under the hood and I got to see what was really happening. Now people can see what's happening on the outside, but they don't know what's going on the inside. And fortunately, I had a view in there. And many of these people who had succeeded, it was because they felt the need to prove themselves, right? One of them, I remember he's like, I need to prove them wrong. That was like one of his mantras. And so he created a tech company, sold it for $40 million, but then felt good about it for 5 minutes and then was like beating himself up for why he didn't sell it for more. And then now what's next, right? So even though, yes, a trauma response was he went and he created something great, but he did it not from a pure place. He didn't, and then in the end, there was a lack of fulfillment that was there for him. And my guess is when you speak to people, do you feel fulfilled afterwards? Are you still beating yourself up or going like, I have to keep doing this in order to feel better about myself?
Stephanie, I think you just hit such a cool nail on the head. Because it's been about 6 years I've been doing it professionally. I would say I was that 40 million guy in the beginning and it shifted over time. Like I would say in the beginning, it really was like kind of I'm here to prove something. I'm here to show that I can do it, all this stuff. But then over time, I always kind of make a joke, but it's not a joke at all. I say the kids give me more than I could ever give them. And I really mean that because there's been a healing with every story shared and every presentation done. So I can truly and genuinely relate to both of those things. So thankfully now, maybe it's not perfect, but it seems to be more the latter. Whereas when it started would be a bit of the former, admittedly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Cool. All right. So then let's talk about how to fix this stuff because I don't want people to have to give hundreds of presentations to do it. And I think I might have gotten a little lucky along the way too. Things were, just working in my favor and it happened nicely. And that's not the case for everyone. So the rapid rewire method, there's tons of things out there now about trauma and doing all this stuff. What was really interesting to me with what you were talking about on the phone is you're like, nope, this is like a 60-minute process. And that's good marketing, but you were so genuine in what you were saying too. You're like, no, I believe that we can help people turn this stuff around really fast. So let's dive into the specifics of the rapid rewire method. And then of course, why is it rapid where some of these other places might say, well, you need a year of coaching and then sign on to our monthly subscription to heal your trauma.
Yeah, I think there is definitely an old paradigm, Evan, of what healing means. Quite honestly, when I say that it can be fast and integrative, meaning that there's lasting results and it's been a complete process, so we're not still chipping away at little bits. We've gotten a lot of pushback. People saying it's unethical to say that you can heal, trauma that quickly or that you can change problems that fast. It's like, it's really fascinating to see where people are in their consciousness, right? It's just like people said there's no way to run a 4-minute mile, and then some dude did it, and now everyone can do it. But at one point in time, that was impossible.
Mhm.
And so I feel like this is the same thing with the path that we're taking is, hey, if you have protocols that can work effectively and efficiently with the mind, the emotions, and the body, so in all the ways that a memory or an experience is stored, we can then create the change on the subconscious level, not just conscious. So the challenge with a lot of the modalities or tools out there for why people, I think, say, well, it takes a while or it can't heal, is let's go with traditional therapy, right? It's very conscious level stuff. You're talking about how does it have you feel and think about this, and you re-share the story and the narrative the whole time. So you almost like re-traumatize yourself when you're
Yep.
sharing the negative experiences. It creates deeper mental grooves in your brain, and then that's the path that keeps firing still. There hasn't actually been a change because it's only conscious level work.
Mm.
And then, with journaling, even, it's a good excavation to find things that are arising, but you're not actually creating the change through journaling. Same thing with breath work. I was a breathwork facilitator. It's beautiful to work with the somatics, right? And bring stuff up, but you're not able to pinpoint the issue. And then how long do you have to keep breathing till you feel like the specific problem you want is gone?
Right.
So what I've found with these tools, and I always like to give credit where credit is due, these were created by a Yugoslavian researcher and psychologist. His name is Zivorad Slavinsky. And we really call him like the grand synthesizer of these phenomenal tools. He looked at all the modalities that were out there and he started to study them and use them. And he's like, gosh, what are the elements that actually work, that are actually creating the shift, the transformation for people? And so he started whacking away the extraneous pieces that are really unnecessary, that are not making the process work, and then grabbing the pieces that really were working. And then he started to stack them in a very systematized way. He would then battle test it with his clientele and then continue to refine them. What we ended up with are they seemingly quite simple but extraordinarily sophisticated tools that work really well when facilitated on yourself, someone else, or even to groups, where again, they work mentally, emotionally, somatically. So all of our processes, we tap into the image, the thought, the emotion, and the body sensation.
Mhm.
There are many modalities out there. They're also great. We don't like to bash them because I'm trained in many of them, and a lot of them work for me too. But sometimes they might take longer or never really get to a full integration because many of the tools out there solely focus on cognition, some solely just emotional, and some somatic. Some maybe have two, but they don't have all 4 levels of awareness, right? So what we mentioned, which is why our tools work so well. And then there's other psychological principles in the mix, like duplication, paradoxical intention, et cetera, that are inside of the tools that make them work so well.
Mhm.
But it's really just the way that they were systematized to work with the mind, the emotions, and the body.
Okay. Michelle already said only 20 minutes in. She said, this is really good. Thank you both. Michelle, I'm glad you enjoyed something already. And I know that seems so simple probably to you, Michelle, but especially for a guest, that makes both of our day as a guest and a host. So thank you so much. Okay. Now, when we're talking about this method, though, and this might sound funny, but to me, we've had so many people come on the show and like some are like these brain devices where you're getting hooked up. Some's like, you got to drink this magic drink and you're going to see entities and then all of a sudden you're going to be healed, right? Like we've had it all. So just to be clear, what is involved? Like, what do I have to do? And I'm not asking you to give away the secret sauce here, but what does one have to do to actually utilize the rapid rewire method? Are we literally wiring something up? Is it something that we're talking through? I'd love to know more about the process
Yeah.
itself.
So it is a series of prompts. So all of our protocols are standardized into scripts, really. So
Mhm.
even if I were to say right now, like, man, I feel really frustrated with my neighbor who did X, Y, or Z, and I was really dysregulated or just even slightly bothered. And I was like, please help me with this. I don't want to feel this anymore. I could literally hand you one of the scripts. You could just follow it systematically and help me get to a result. So really, it's the ability to follow a script. And if you are receiving it, that you have the willingness to tell the truth on yourself as you respond. that you are also willing to tap into the thoughts, the emotions, and then really just to see where somatically, the issue lies. And so really it's a very simple process. All of them are, where the person facilitating, whether it's yourself or someone else, reads the question, and then you as a participant answer honestly what is coming up. And there's a lot of repetition inside of it. There's a reason for that, because it starts to unearth and bring unconscious content to the surface. And then we also begin to clear it through, the image, thought, emotion, body, sensation.
Mhm.
So I'm even happy to give you guys a tool today to use, because I think it's great to be able to talk about stuff, but until you really experience it, it's going to make a difference. I mean, one, we do have a freebie on our website, which is a different tool that I'm not going to tell you about right now. But let's say you were, is there anything, Evan, right now that you're frustrated with, kind of annoyed by?
I wouldn't say frustrated or annoyed by, but I've been in a level of stress for a little bit for sure.
Okay, cool. So I'm not going to run you through the process right now just because I want to be mindful of time, but here's what I'm going to give you to work on afterwards.
Thanks.
Stress is not technically an emotion, but we do have an emotion wheel that we work with to help you pinpoint a specific emotion. When you focus your attention on the problem, that whatever is causing the stress,
Mhm.
then we say, okay, what's the problem? What's the emotional charge? That's actually all we need to know to enter into a process. So we don't need to know the history. We don't need to know the full story. But once you pinpoint a specific problem, what's the emotional charge that gets activated when you put your attention to it? The next step, and this is the tool, and this is how simple it can be, is feel that emotion, really allow yourself to experience it, and then say something bad about it. What's negative about that emotion? Staying on the emotion. Then you keep feeling the emotion and you tell yourself something that's good about the emotion or positive about the emotion. Not about the situation, but what about the emotion?
Mhm.
And then toggle it back. What's bad about the emotion? What's good about the emotion? Until it starts to break apart and disintegrate. And so it's really fascinating because you wouldn't think it would work so easily, but we're bringing up both dualities, showing that there is a good and a bad about everything. Once you're able to identify that, it begins to pull it apart. So, yeah, you had a question.
Well, no, I have, yeah, because I think I have an example, and I just for clarity for the audience too, I wanted to know. So, an emotion then would be that's really interesting that I went to stress too, and you're right, stress is not an emotion. So I'm like, what is that feeling actually? But that's a separate question. So let's say anger, that would be agree that's an emotion. So then I would be going through this exercise and saying, okay, on the bad side, anger is certainly destructive, right? When you engage with it, it can be destructive and can cause things that lead to regret. At the same time, on a positive side, anger is energizing. It's powerful, right? You literally are flying off the adrenaline from it, and feel like you can break through walls if you were on it. So that would be an example, right, of the negative and the positive for that emotion, and you keep going back and forth with
Yep.
those.
And you give very concise responses. So you can say, and funny that you chose anger. I was actually at an event with a friend, and he sits down next to the couch and he goes, Steph, I'm angry right now. Can you help me? And I was like, yeah, we're in the middle of a party, but I got you. And so essentially I was like, feel that anger. And he closed his eyes and I was like, tell me something bad about it. And he goes, it's distracting me right now from being present and being here with my friends. Okay, thank you. Now feeling that anger, tell me something that's good about it. It's showing me that I care, like that there's something right around his issue. I want to keep it private, but that I like, it means something and I care. Thank you. Feeling that anger, tell me something negative about the anger. Ugh, it like, and then say the negative thing. And then
Mhm.
feeling that anger, what's positive? And again, you keep toggling good, bad, good, bad, good, bad, until, like, let's say you get to what's good about the anger. I don't have anything left. Okay, fine. Go back to what's bad about the anger. You might still have more stuff. What's good about it? Nothing. What's bad about it? Nothing now. When you have nothing on both sides, then you check back in with the emotion. Where am I with with the anger? I don't feel it. I don't know what happened. And that's exactly what happened to my friend, right? So what we're doing is we're decreasing the charge on that. That's a big part of what our tools focus on, is the emotional charge, because that's what creates something to become a problem for us, right? If everything's a neutral event, but the meaning you're placing on it or the relationship you have with it is negatively charged, it's going to hold it in place as a problem.
Okay.
And until we dissolve that charge, it's going to continue to be a problem. But once it's dissolved and it's neutral, it ceases to become an issue for us anymore.
Mm.
Right? As another quick example, just to land what I meant by that, I had someone in my life that I was really challenged by, but I couldn't necessarily get rid of her in my life with the nature of the circumstances. And every time I was around her, I'd be like super annoyed, like wanting to get out of there, don't want to be near them. And when I did the process and I blamed her, it's the way she talks to me, it's the way that she behaves, blah, 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 blah. When I became neutral about her, she could keep being however she was being, but it didn't even bother me. I was like, I'm good, right? It was because of the emotional charge that I had about her and the judgments that made her a problem for me. The moment I went neutral with her, nothing she could say or do could bother me anymore. I was literally liberated and free from that. So if we look at different areas of our life, even with your health challenges that you might be going through, what is your emotional relationship to the current circumstance of physical unwellness that maybe your body is working through? Are you frustrated with it? Are you impatient that it hasn't healed faster? Are you, really angry that you have to go through this? Are you feeling hopeless or helpless that you're dealing with this and you can't find the solutions? Well, part of that, when you hold that emotional charge around your current physical health, that's going to keep it in place, and it's going to be much more difficult to heal that than if you were to neutralize it or have a more optimistic, outlook, or just feel a more positive emotion around it.
Yeah. Thank you. Michelle had another comment here. I just wanted to know, well, I think it's a great comment, but I also wanted to know what you think. Michelle said, I can see how the positive and negative dialogue takes the charge out of it. Brilliant. Takes you right out of FFF. So fight, flight, fear, cell danger. Is it no freeze, cell danger response and into safety? Is that kind of the idea behind it?
Yeah. So we're essentially de-identifying with the problem. That's what we want to do, right? When you release the emotional charge to it, you're de-identifying, you're not tethered to it anymore. It ceases to become an issue. And yes, you are absolutely, Michelle, you nailed it, pulling yourself out of that stress response, the fight, flight, freeze. And when you're neutral again, right? When you've de-identified from it, it's not a part of who you are. You then can have the ability to choose once again. It's a similar thing, like coming back to what you said, Evan, like maybe speaking was kind of a trauma response for you, right? I had to prove something. So it wasn't coming from like a pure, clean intention. It was coming from a need that was unmet. So you're like, I'm going to do this, which is probably when you were doing it. My guess, when you're trying to book speaking gigs, you were probably in the FFF, right?
Oh, it was constant adrenaline. Yes. And just there was ego involved too. And I'm sure that's not perfect now. I'm positive that there's some percentage of that unfortunately still is, but it was heavy there. I could tell.
You could feel it. Yeah. So that's what I mean, like that disempowering emotional charge that was there. Once you healed that part that had you feel like you had to be in front of people or to prove something or whatever that was for you, all of a sudden, I'm sure your emotional relationship to trying to get speaking gigs and showing up speaking to these kids, there was a different emotional charge for you. Was
And the
there?
reviews got better.
Yeah. So it's shifting how we feel about things will shift our relationship with them, which naturally usually shifts the very thing that we thought we had a problem with,
So,
right? Or
yeah.
struggle with.
So cool. I want to mix this in a little bit with the potential business side as well. And I know the audience like, oh my gosh, Ev with the business again. But so many of the people that are watching right now, there's about 20 of you guys live. So hello. Many of you guys are health coaches or health practitioners that these limiting beliefs and these other things are affecting you here as well. And when I was talking to Stephanie on the phone prior to us doing the podcast, I asked her, I'm like, do you think this could help with that? She's like, oh my gosh, yes. So I'd love to know, Stephanie, if we can get into some specifics, like, how can this type of methodology help people with business? Like, where are they stuck? And then why would going through questions like this help them in business? They're like, well, no, that's marketing and sales, isn't it? Like that has nothing to do with this, but I personally beg to differ. So I'd love to hear it from you.
Yeah, look, we actually, funny enough, just put up a social media post that talked about success, right? As in your business. And it's not just the doing, it's also the being. I think so often people look at the tactical side of business or growing a business, but they're not really looking at the mental, emotional side that we have to endure to build a successful business. And so when you're dysregulated, when you are feeling stress, or when you are in anger that things aren't moving fast enough, or impatient, or feeling hurt that someone said they were going to do something for you and didn't show up, that's all pulling you off course in your business. It's a distraction. And so what is necessary is like, how do I get myself back to center? How do I neutralize that charge so that I can have more clarity, be more resourceful, be able to move forward more empowered, right? It is so necessary to work on the mental emotional side. And we literally just did a workshop for my friend's community, Heal at Scale. She works with functional medicine doctors or wellness practitioners to help them build their business. And she brought us in because many of them have a massive fear of being seen on social media. But she's like, but I'm trying to push them to push that button and just record. And they show up each week and they're not doing it.
Mhm.
I'm like, Joy, they know all the tactical stuff. They know they just have to hit a button, record, but there's some inner conflict, some inner block that's preventing them from doing what they need to do to create and cultivate the business that they want. And so that's why I would say that these tools are really necessary for ourselves to move through whatever inner barriers or blocks we have to achieving what we want. And then especially for your incredible audience of, health and wellness practitioners, I'm going to guess that many of the clients you work with, nutrition is absolutely necessary. Supplementation is really going to help the body and boost it where it needs more, but there really is a mental emotional component too
Mhm.
that needs to be addressed to help them with a more holistic healing and to get to many times root cause of what's creating the disruption or the unwellness in the physical body. So I think it can help with helping to break through as an entrepreneur, and then also for your amazing community, potentially help to, work with their clients with these protocols as well.
Yeah, I'm going to ask it a little prematurely, actually, because Michelle already asked. She said, Stephanie, can you please add a link to where I can find your program in the chat? So normally I'd ask this in about 10 minutes, but why not right now? Where can people find you if they're interested in what you're saying and want to learn more?
Yeah, they can go to our website, rapidrewiremethod.com. I don't see is this where I can drop in the chat? You heard me say rapidrewiremethod.com, and I'm dropping it right there.
Okay, we got you right here too.
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you, Michelle, and thank you, Stephanie. So I think it's cool that all these things kind of overlap because, again, for most of our practitioners, they're working on health issues still. And then I find the business side particularly fascinating just because some practitioners, same education, same exact certifications, they'll come right out of the gate and they're crushing it, man. They're helping tens and tens of people in the first year alone. And then others, they'll be a few years in and they've barely taken a few clients outside of their family. And I'm like, well, you guys aren't that much different personality wise. You're about similar level of intelligence. You got the same education. So what's going on here? And that's where you can see this stuff. Now, similarly to your point about health, I guess this is almost answering my question that I had in the beginning, right? What are some signs that people might be dealing with some unresolved stuff? Well, I can certainly answer from a health side because I've seen this so many times. And for those of you guys watching, if you guys work with clients currently, let me know in the chat if you've seen this in yourself or others. You start doing all the stuff. You do the labs, you do the supplements, like you said, you get the nutrition down, and you realize that objectively speaking, you're probably putting better stuff into your body than 99% of the people that you know, literally 99% of the people. And yet you'll still have, maybe a 20% lingering in your health issues. I'd love to know if you guys can relate to that at all, because I found that myself. And especially when you're doing this as a young adult and you're watching your idiot friends at 22 go out and drink half a handle of vodka and then work on 4 hours of sleep the next day, probably still drunk. Maybe they shouldn't have been going to work. And you see that and you're like, I just ate organic salmon for dinner. I didn't have any alcohol. Like, how do I still feel worse than them? That's when I was faced with this reality that it has to be something more. There has to be something deeper here. So I've definitely experienced that myself. And so I'd love to know about, maybe to the degree that you're able to share, testimonials or just stories of people who have been doing all the things for years and then they try the Rapid Rewire method and it finally helps them kind of get over the edge.
Yeah, my co-founder, Wesley, he actually works directly with a doctor here in Colorado. So it's this doctor in Boulder. And every time he has a new patient come through with some sort of medical issue, he sends them to us. Now, again, we're more of a training company. We teach people, but we still will do exceptions where we're helping folks, working with them. So we've seen people alleviate deep physical pain in their body because there is a correlation to emotions as well as like what's showing up in your body, to people who were struggling with autoimmune stuff. And then all of a sudden they started to notice that they were able to be more tolerant of certain foods that they were not before, and more. I want to be very mindful to also say, like, we're not going to make any sort of medical claims because we like to be as ethical as possible. But we know that many times, even just if you are stressed out, right, we just call it stress, it does release a cascade of chemicals into your physical body. So the emotions that we feel interact with our somatic body, and then it can create disruptions if there's a constant flow of those chemicals that are ineffective for our body and can block normal functioning. If we can rework the emotions, right, that we're dealing with and start to create, again, more neutrality, more peace, more calm, more joy, it'll start to interact with our physical body in a certain way as well. And what we've seen with those particular people we've worked with, that there's an alleviation of the symptom. We've had people even straight on like group sessions that we've done start to go, I came to this with a light headache and it's gone. And it's not what they worked on, it was something else. But they're like, that was so weird. How did that pain just disappear from my brain? Again, we're not going to make claims, but it was just like when people are teeing this information up to us, we're like, that's so interesting. I wonder if there's a mental emotional connection to what you're feeling in your physical body, which of course there is. So I would say, like, it's so key to look at all areas of someone's health and wellness, not just trying to address the symptoms, but getting to, like I said earlier, many times the root cause is the mental and emotional disruptions that people have.
I don't want to give an overly tricky question here or even an unanswerable question, but I'm genuinely curious about your thoughts because I find this stuff fascinating and I always here's what I'm trying to say. I want to know where you think the line gets drawn with the mental emotional work versus a practical side of, hey, we really do have a toxic world. And here's what I mean. I find that there's two camps, and each camp, in my opinion, takes a little too far. So sometimes I don't even know where to draw the line. There's the side that's like, hey, this is like, hippie woo, this is crazy, right? You just got to eat well, you exercise and you'll be fine. Okay, I don't think it's just that. Then at the same time, you do get a lot of people in this other camp that are like, all right, nothing else matters. As long as your mind's strong, you're good to go. And I would be able to agree with that to some degree because we see things like the placebo effect. I mean, there's miraculous things that happen, obviously, because we believe it. But what I haven't seen is anyone defy aging or death yet just because they believe that they're going to live forever. So there's some part of me that just naturally believes that our body can decay and degrade a little bit, maybe at different rates, depending on what we're doing or not doing. But obviously, there is a real part to this human experience here, and there are real consequences that happen in the physical world. And then there's this amazing mental emotional component. So maybe a rewording of the question is, how do you find balance? Because I already know that you're a balanced person with this, but how does one find balance and not get too far on either camp here? Because I do think both are involved for healing.
Yeah, I mean, it's to what you just said, Evan. It's all involved for healing. We can't do just one or the other. And not only that, everybody's constitution is different. That's why, we can prescribe something to one person, it doesn't work. I work with a functional medicine doctor, and when I get sick and everybody becomes a doctor around you, right? When you're not feeling good, they're like, take this, do that, do that. I'm like, let me talk to my functional nutritionist and my functional doctor, because she also does kinesiology. I always have a hard time saying that word. She'll test it to make sure that my body even wants that, right? And then by how much. So I think it's really important to go, well, that element is important, but then we also address the mental emotional side. It's a holistic view on it. And I think there is a certain very real 3D stuff that we cannot override with the mind or with nutrition. Like what you were saying, we can't stop death or we can't prevent aging. It is a natural part. But can we make the process that's inevitable more fulfilling, more graceful, with more ease? Then resenting it, being frustrated by it, trying to push our boundaries too hard to the point of breakdown because we're trying to overcome it or outperform it, right? Again, those are probably trauma responses too. If someone's like trying to force something versus this is inevitable. And I'm just using the aging process because you brought it up.
Mhm.
How can I continuously support myself holistically through the nutrition, through removing toxins out of my life, not just food toxins, environmental toxins, but human toxins, thought toxins, emotional toxins that are all contributing to my current level of fulfillment and true wellness right now.
Mhm.
So I think it's really about addressing all of it as a whole. There isn't one right or wrong camp. I think it's like, are we looking at it from all aspects? And some people might need more on the functional
Yeah, yeah.
side, right? And then other people are like, I mean, a friend of mine, his ex-wife, she's a health coach. 2 autoimmune disorders, different tumors in her body, thought that she had, might have breast cancer and just had scans. It's like all this stuff's going wrong. And everyone's like, but she's so healthy. She is so good at making sure that she eats well and, you know, is taking all her supplements and works out. But she has not worked on the trauma from her childhood.
Hmm.
She has not worked on her ineffective behaviors as an adult right now. That's creating a lot of dis-ease in her physical body. And I'm sorry, but no supplements or nutrition or workouts is going to change that. It has to be paired holistically with looking at the mental and emotional too. So I think all of it
I
needs to be included.
I love that answer. And yeah, I don't think I think what I'm trying to get to, and I know it's unrealistic right now, is like it'd be so cool if we could look at our clients and say, "Oh, you need this percent of this and this percent of that." And I don't think we're there yet. Maybe we never will be. I don't know. But I think a fantastic start for right now is assuming both need to be involved, and doing our best to achieve that. And I know that you talked about the training side, so I'd love to mention that in 1 second. I just want to get to one more question here from Tracy in the comments. Tracy had asked you, "Have you guys used this method with grief?"
Oh yeah, girl. It was really what brought me to this work.
Good point.
So I don't know if you missed the beginning, but essentially I had a miscarriage, and where I went was deep, deep grief, debilitating grief, and it was with our trauma release tool specifically that I was able to integrate the grief and liberate myself from being stuck in it, right? So these tools work on essentially any emotion that you're struggling in, to get you to be free of it. So I want to be mindful, we don't say that one emotion is better than the other, or the negative ones are bad and the positive ones are the ones that we want to stick to and they're good. They're all welcome to the table. It's just a matter of, are you stuck in the disempowering ones? That's when it becomes a problem. Are you stuck in overwhelm? Are you stuck in anger? Are you stuck in feeling hopeless, helpless, inadequate? Are you stuck in feeling, frustrated, or in the grief like I was? That's when it becomes a problem. And most likely it's affecting our physical body, right? And so again, it's about integrating it all. If we need to move in and out, that's fine, of all these emotions, but just not being stuck in the disempowering ones. So grief being one of them.
Awesome. Thank you,
Mhm.
Tracy, and thank you, Stephanie. So let's talk about, as we finish up here, rapidrewiremethod.com. There's this training side to this. So just to be very clear for people, what is it? What is everything that you guys offer nowadays?
Yeah, so we are all about putting the power into the hands of the people. So we don't work with people directly. We train people in this cutting edge set of transformational tools. There's about 18 that we teach across 2 different levels, but we do have practitioner certification trainings where you can learn these tools. You get to use them on yourself to clear whatever is your own stuff, and then gain mastery around how do I facilitate another person with these tools. So it's been really exciting. We've had a lot of coaches, therapists, healers, nutritionists, And we've even had non-coaches come through. So people who are just passionate about their personal growth. If you look at our website and look at our results page, there was an MD, there was a nurse practitioner, to a lot of entrepreneurs, because they know that they need tools to help them get out of it. But we do have a practitioner certification where you can learn these tools over the course of 4 months, get really good at them, and be able to facilitate them well to create rapid and lasting change.
That's awesome. And if it wasn't already a good enough podcast for you guys, just so you know, Stephanie came recommended directly from the man himself, Reed Davis. So really cool. Stephanie, they know where they can find you, obviously. Is there anywhere on social media that they can follow you, or anything else we missed?
Yeah. So our IG handles at Rapid Rewire Method. My personal one is at I am Stephanie Kwong. If you want to try out one of our processes, go to our website, rapidrewiremethod.com. And on the homepage, there's a download. I'll actually, if you have show notes, I'll give you a link that you can click. That'll take them directly to download the free experience, but you can literally be guided through one of our processes to have your own, firsthand experience of what these tools are. Because I get it that you're like, can it really happen that fast? What are you talking about? And it's like, when you actually get to experience it, you'll know.
Thank you. All right. Our signature question on the show to finish up today. It can be an answer that relates to what we talked about. Doesn't have to be. So the signature question on the show is, if we could give you a magic wand and you could wave it and force every single person, I always use the word force. I got to use something less aggressive. Encourage every single person listening to do one thing for their health. So that means you can get us all to start doing one thing, or you can get us all to stop doing one thing. What is the one thing that Stephanie would get us to do?
Oh my gosh. The one thing, I'm waving my wand. Please, pretty please, focus on what is not working in your life, the struggles that you're feeling, which are probably root cause trauma, and clean it up. There's so many times I see adults, I think that they're really kids in adult bodies. There's so much that we experienced in our childhood that we haven't faced and dealt with, but have the courage to really face off with that, do the work to heal, so that you can really be and become the person you want to be.
Awesome. Stephanie, thank you so much. Guys, you can find her at rapidrewiremethod.com if you're interested in the FDN program to any degree. We have a bunch of freebies and workshops at fdntraining.com/resources. That's fdntraining.com/resources. If you're on YouTube, we'll be back tomorrow, Friday, July 19th, with another podcast. If you're on audio, well, nothing's changed. Monday and Tuesday and Thursday we release. Stephanie, thank you so much for being a part of this.